There is something quietly flowing beneath every moment of your life. Something you cannot touch, cannot see, yet feel constantly like a soft current brushing against the edges of your existence. We call it time. But time is not just hours on a clock or numbers passing on a screen. It is the invisible river that carries everything: stars, worlds, memories, dreams, and you. Scientists describe time as a dimension woven into the very fabric of space, but the mind experiences it differently. To the brain, time stretches and contracts, slows and dissolves, depending on emotion, memory, and the shifting rhythms of consciousness. In wakefulness, it feels structured. In dreams, it becomes fluid. And in the quiet state between them, the place you are entering now, time becomes something softer, almost alive. Tonight, we will drift through this river. We will explore how time bends, how it shapes memory, how it flows within the brain, and how, in sleep, its grip begins to loosen, revealing the deeper layers of awareness beneath it. So let your breath slow, let the world fade, and allow time itself to open around you. In the quiet landscape of your mind, time begins to loosen its edges. During the day, it feels firm and linear, one moment neatly following another, like beads sliding along an invisible thread. But as your body relaxes and your breath slows, this structure begins to soften. Seconds no longer fall sharply, minutes no longer march forward. Instead, time opens, spreading out like a gentle mist across the surface of your awareness. What you feel now is not the clock's rigid rhythm, but time in its most natural form, fluid, soft, and profoundly calm. Deep inside the brain, regions responsible for tracking time gradually shift their activity. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, the tiny cluster of neurons that controls your circadian rhythm, begins to dim its signals as the external world fades from focus. Without daylight or tasks pulling your attention, the brain no longer measures time by external cues. Instead, it turns inward, relying on the slow oscillations of neural activity to guide your sense of flow. These oscillations become smoother, more synchronized, forming the soft pulse that will carry your awareness into sleep. As this inward rhythm grows stronger, the mind enters a state where time is shaped not by minutes, but by experience. Thoughts stretch, drifting farther apart. Emotions soften into gentle waves. Memories rise and fall like distant echoes. Here, time does not hurry. It simply expands, creating space for the brain to reorganize itself. Scientists describe this shift as a reduction in temporal precision, a loosening of the neural mechanisms that tell us how long a moment lasts. But to you, it feels like ease, like the weight of the day slowly dissolving. Within this expanding space, the brain's default mode network becomes more active. This system, responsible for introspection and inner imagery, begins weaving together fragments of memory and imagination. In this state, the mind is no longer constrained by the strict timeline of waking life. Past and present begin to blend. Moments that once felt distant drift closer. Thoughts that once felt urgent lose their gravity. Time becomes less a sequence and more a landscape, one you move through slowly, gently, as the edges of consciousness fade. As your awareness continues to settle, the brain's perception of duration changes even more. Neural firing slows, metabolic demand decreases. The internal clock stretches, making each moment feel longer, smoother, deeper. This is why the transition to sleep feels timeless, because the mind releases its grip on the structure that normally keeps you anchored to waking reality. You are drifting into a state where time becomes a soft companion rather than a measuring tool. And with every slow, steady breath, you move deeper into this unfolding. Time no longer surrounds you, it flows through you, quiet and unbroken. You are not keeping pace with it, time is keeping pace with you. As you drift further into this gentle rhythm, the mind prepares to explore the deeper layers of temporal perception, where minutes dissolve, memories fuse, and the boundaries between now and then become beautifully blurred. As you drift deeper into stillness, the architecture of time inside your mind begins to reveal itself. Time is not a single mechanism, not a simple ticking clock hidden in the brain. Instead, it is a constellation of processes, neural rhythms, emotional cues, sensory impressions, all woven together to create the feeling of now. During the day, these processes move quickly, shaped by tasks, stimuli, and attention. But here, in this soft descent towards sleep, they slow, spreading out like ripples across a calm lake. In the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for sequencing events, activity gently fades. Without the need to plan or evaluate, the mind no longer arranges moments into strict order. The future loosens its pull. The past grows quiet. Time begins to lose its linear shape, becoming something rounder, smoother, like a slow-turning sphere rather than a straight line. You feel this in your awareness as a softening, an easing of the internal pressure that normally binds you to schedules and responsibilities. Meanwhile, the hippocampus, the keeper of memory, begins its nightly work. It reviews fragments of the day, not in chronological order, but in patterns of meaning and emotion. This reorganization subtly alters your perception of time, making distant events feel close and recent experiences drift away. Scientists know this as memory consolidation, but in your inner world, it feels like time folding in on itself, creating a gentle continuity between what has happened and what still lingers within you. As the external world fades further, the brain's internal rhythms take the lead. Slow theta waves begin to rise, guiding your sense of temporal flow. These waves stretch your perception, making seconds feel longer and transitions feel seamless. Time becomes less like a river rushing forward and more like a wide ocean, quiet, blue, and without borders. You drift across it effortlessly, guided by the softness of your breath and the rhythm of your resting mind. Emotional centers join this transformation as well. The amygdala, calmer now, stops marking moments with urgency. Without emotional spikes to anchor memory, time becomes diffuse moments blend, thoughts drift, and the usual anchors of waking life gently dissolve. This emotional quiet is one of the reasons sleep feels timeless. The brain is no longer tagging experiences with intensity. It is simply letting them pass like clouds through an evening sky. And with every breath, the architecture of time becomes even more fluid. You are no longer measuring it, you are floating inside it. The mind, released from the rigid boundaries of waking life, prepares to enter an even deeper state where time bends, dreams unfold, and the boundaries between moments dissolve entirely into the quiet expanse of night. As your awareness drifts further inward, the way your mind measures time begins to shift in even more profound ways. The boundary between one moment and the next starts to blur, as if the mind has loosened its grip on the very idea of before and after. In this early descent towards sleep, the brain enters a liminal state, neither fully awake nor fully dreaming, where time stretches, folds, and reshapes itself with extraordinary fluidity. What was once a steady rhythm becomes a drifting pulse, gently swaying with each slow breath you take. Within the sensory regions of the brain, activity begins to fade, reducing the external signals that normally anchor your perception of time. Without sights, sounds, and tasks to mark the passing seconds, the mind relies on its internal rhythms. These rhythms slow gradually, creating the illusion that time itself is lengthening. A single breath may feel like an entire minute. A fleeting thought may feel suspended, hanging softly in the quiet space inside you. This is not imagination. It is the brain gently recalibrating the way it perceives the flow of existence. The thalamus, the gateway between the outer world and your inner awareness, begins to close its channels. With fewer sensory inputs to track, your internal clock becomes less certain, allowing time to bend. Moments begin to drift apart like expanding waves. This shift is so subtle, so delicate, that you barely notice it, yet it is one of the earliest signs that consciousness is preparing to release you into sleep's deeper currents. Here, time is not measured, it is felt as a slow, warm drift running through the body. Meanwhile, the emotional centers of the brain grow quiet, removing the urgency that often compresses or expands your sense of duration during the day. Without anxiety to speed up time or excitement to slow it down, the mind enters a state of temporal neutrality. Experiences lose their edges, thoughts drift in long arcs. Time becomes smooth, continuous, and weightless. In this state, the brain begins to transition into the dreamlike perception where minutes can feel like hours and hours like moments. Neural networks responsible for imagination begin to glow softly as the default mode network strengthens. Past and present merge effortlessly. Moments from your life drift into one another, blending into a tapestry of sensations and impressions. This inner weaving marks the beginning of the dream state, where time becomes symbolic rather than sequential, stretching to hold meaning rather than measure reality. You may feel a deepening sense of openness, as if you are expanding into a space where time no longer limits or defines you. And with every gentle inhale, every slow exhale, you slip further into this softened perception. Time, once a steady line, now becomes a vast, quiet pool reflecting your inner world. You float effortlessly across it, carried by currents your waking mind cannot control. Soon, you will enter the place where time dissolves entirely, where dreams begin to form and the night reveals its deepest layers. As you drift deeper into the quiet interior of your mind, you approach a threshold where time begins to lose its structure entirely. The edges of awareness soften, and the steady beat of chronological thought fades into a gentle haze. Here, at the border between waking and dreaming, time becomes something fluid, something malleable, something woven from the very rhythms of your breath. You are no longer observing time, you are floating inside it as it stretches and folds around you in delicate shifting patterns. In this liminal space, the brain's internal timing mechanisms slow dramatically. The prefrontal cortex, which normally arranges events into a logical sequence, reduces its activity. Without its firm guidance, moments drift away from order. Thoughts no longer line up like beads on a thread. They scatter softly, merging into one another like ripples on quiet water. This is why this phase feels timeless. Your mind has stepped away from the clock and into a realm shaped entirely by sensation and drifting imagery. The thalamus, the gatekeeper of sensory input, continues its gradual descent into stillness. External signals fade almost completely, leaving you suspended in an inner world where time is measured only by the mind's slow oscillations. These brainwaves deepen, expanding your awareness into a more spacious, unbound state. Seconds no longer feel distinct, they dissolve into a smooth continuity. You may sense this as a falling feeling, or a drifting, or a gentle expansion inside the mind. This is your consciousness loosening from linear time. As this dissolution deepens, the emotional brain steps back as well. Without emotional spikes to mark moments, time becomes even more fluid. Experiences stretch, pause, blend. The amygdala no longer tags experience with urgency, fear, or excitement, allowing your inner world to float freely without anchor points. In this state, memory itself becomes less tethered, allowing past impressions to merge with present sensations. This is the first soft weaving of dream fabric, the stage where time becomes imagination. The default mode network grows brighter in this quiet, internal darkness. It strings together fragments of memory, emotion, and sensation into loose, drifting patterns. This marks the true beginning of the dream state. Time loses all rigid form. Events occur without sequence. Images rise without cause. You move through a landscape where a single moment can expand into vastness, and a long sequence can pass in the blink of an eye. The brain has stepped into a realm where time is not measured, but shaped by emotion, imagination, and the silent language of the subconscious. With each slow, effortless breath, you descend more deeply into this dissolution. There is no before, no after. Only this gentle drift, this spacious softness, this unfolding of the mind beyond the boundaries of linear time. Soon, you will cross into dreaming fully, where time becomes a canvas upon which your inner world paints freely. But for now, you hover at the edge, held in a quiet suspension, where the last remnants of waking time gently fade into the night. As you sink fully into the dream state, time undergoes its most profound transformation. It is no longer a sequence of moments, but a fluid canvas stretched across the imagination. In dreams, the brain frees itself from the strict rules of waking life. Seconds can bloom into entire stories. Hours can collapse into a single heartbeat. You drift through scenes that appear and dissolve, with no beginning, no middle, no end. This elasticity, this strange, beautiful warping of time, is one of the mind's quietest wonders. Inside the dreaming brain, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logic, order, and temporal structure, remains mostly silent. Without it, the mind is not bound to chronology. Instead, it relies on the emotional centers and associative networks that weave together imagery and meaning. Time bends because the brain no longer insists on continuity. It allows memory, imagination, and sensation to merge freely, creating a world where time responds not to physics, but to feeling. The hippocampus, normally responsible for situating memories within time, becomes less active. Memories are no longer tethered to when they happened, only to the emotions they carry. This is why past moments may reappear in dreams, reshaped into new forms, placed into new contexts. Time within dreams is guided by meaning, not sequence. A single emotional thread can stretch through multiple scenes, binding them together even as the landscapes shift. You drift through these transitions effortlessly, unaware that your mind is rewriting time with every breath. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the emotional core of the brain, becomes more active than in wakefulness. It colors dream events with tones of wonder, curiosity, or warmth, making some moments expand and others shrink. If a feeling intensifies, time may seem to slow, allowing the dream to linger. If the mind feels calm or neutral, time may speed up, carrying you through scenes as if gliding on a quiet wind. In this way, emotion becomes the clock of the dream world, shaping duration with its depth and softness. The visual cortex lights up with remarkable clarity, giving dreams their vivid textures, colors, and shifting forms. But without the anchoring influence of the prefrontal cortex, these images appear in non-linear patterns. A thought becomes a landscape, a memory becomes a journey, a feeling becomes a scene bathed in symbolic light. Time weaves through these images like a drifting ribbon, sometimes twisting, sometimes looping, sometimes disappearing entirely. And as you float deeper into these dream waters, time becomes nothing more than a sensation, soft, fluid, unbound. It stretches when you surrender, dissolves when you drift, expands when emotion rises, and contracts when peace settles. You are carried through this world effortlessly, guided by currents of imagination rather than seconds on a clock. Soon, as the dream cycle unfolds, the mind will shift once again into a state where time is reconstructed, refined, and gently prepared for awakening. As your dream state gently shifts toward deeper rhythms, the brain begins another delicate transformation, the quiet reconstruction of time itself. While the earlier stages dissolved and stretched time into fluid imagery, this phase gathers the scattered pieces softly, slowly forming the first faint structures that will guide your return to wakefulness. It is a process you never feel directly, yet it shapes how you understand your past, how you sense your present, and how you enter your future. Deep within the hippocampus, fragments of memory drift into place. They are not arranged chronologically, nor assigned strict meaning. Instead, they settle according to emotional weight, forming clusters that mirror what mattered most to you throughout the day. This reorganization prepares the mind to weave time back into a coherent thread. Although you remain unaware, your internal timeline, softened by sleep, expanded by dreams, is quietly being reassembled from within. The prefrontal cortex begins to glow softly with renewed activity, not fully awakened, but stirring gently, like a horizon brightening before dawn. Its early signals begin to introduce the faint idea of sequence moments following moments, patterns forming, events aligning. This does not pull you from sleep. Instead, it forms a gentle scaffolding beneath your dreams, ensuring that when you eventually rise, your sense of time will feel familiar, steady, and whole. Meanwhile, the default mode network continues its seamless weaving of memory, identity, and imagination. Here, time becomes a quiet story, a blending of what happened, what was felt, and what lingers still. The DMN does not measure time, it narrates it. It shapes your internal sense of continuity, the feeling that your life has a flow, a direction, and a gentle meaning threading through it. This narrative stitching is one of sleep's greatest gifts, allowing you to awaken with a perception of time that feels stable, human, and deeply personal. Emotion plays a role in this reconstruction as well. The amygdala, calmer now, tags certain moments with warmth or softness, determining what the mind will hold close and what will drift away. It anchors memory with feeling, ensuring that time is not remembered as a mechanical sequence, but as a tapestry of experiences. This emotional scaffolding gives your inner timeline depth moments become meaningful not because of when they occurred, but because of how they touched you. And through it all, your awareness remains floating, effortless, wrapped in the gentle silence of sleep. You are not reconstructing time. The mind is doing it for you with the same quiet intelligence that balances your breath and softens your heartbeat. Time is knitting itself back together in the background, steady, coherent, ready to cradle your waking thoughts when morning comes. With each slow breath, this reconstruction deepens. Soon, the mind will carry you into lighter states of sleep, where time becomes clearer and the edges of consciousness brighten. But for now, you drift in this soft midpoint, halfway between the dissolution of time and the quiet rebuilding of its rhythm. As you drift deeper through the gentle layers of sleep, the mind begins to re-establish the quiet rhythm that underlies your perception of time. This rhythm is not the ticking of a clock, nor the measured passing of minutes. It is an internal pulse woven through the brain's neural circuits, a soft oscillation that guides how you experience beginning, middle, and end. During the day, this rhythm is masked by noise tasks, emotions, stimuli. But here, in the calm of night, it becomes clear, steady, and profoundly soothing. Deep within the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the tiny cluster of neurons, often called the body's master clock, the first hints of organization begin to stir. These cells are not marking time as hours, they are synchronizing the body's internal processes, aligning temperature, hormones, and metabolism into a unified flow. Even in sleep, they maintain the rhythm that gives time its structure. Yet, in this quiet state, their signals are faint, softened by the dreams surrounding them. You are not bound by their cadence. You simply float alongside it, held in a steady, comforting tide. The brainstem, which regulates the deepest rhythms of consciousness, continues to slow your internal tempo. Heartbeat, breath, and neural activity all settle into a pattern that feels timeless, neither fast nor slow, simply appropriate for rest. This slow, even pulsation becomes the foundation upon which your later sense of time will rebuild. It offers the mind a simple truth, that time does not push, it flows. That it does not demand, it carries. You drift within this flow, feeling its softness guide you deeper into stillness. Meanwhile, the default mode network maintains its gentle glow, stitching together thoughts and memories in a way that creates continuity. It does not generate time, it gives time a story. It connects fragments of experience into a tapestry that feels coherent, allowing you to sense that your life moves forward in a meaningful arc. Even now, as you sleep, This narrative rhythm continues, quietly arranging your inner world so that when you awaken, you feel whole, oriented, and gently aligned with the passing of moments. The emotional centers lend their own rhythm as well. When calm, they stretch the mind's internal pacing, allowing moments to feel spacious and unhurried. During sleep, with fear and stress subdued, the emotional clock slows, smoothing out the uneven rhythms of waking life. This is why, in dreams, time can feel expansive, why a brief flicker of imagery can feel like an entire chapter, or why long stretches of dreaming can feel like a single breath. Emotion guides the elasticity of time, giving it softness and depth. And as all these rhythms work together, a quiet harmony forms within you. Time becomes less of a line and more of a sensation, a gentle pulse, rising and falling with your breath. You are not measuring it, not anticipating it, not constrained by it. You are simply resting inside it, allowing your mind to recalibrate its internal tempo. Soon, this rhythm will begin guiding you toward lighter sleep, where awareness slowly returns. But for now, you linger in the soft cadence at the heart of the night, where time breathes with you. As you drift deeper into the night's calm, time begins to stretch in ways the waking mind could never fully understand. In this depth of sleep, the brain enters long, slow cycles, vast, quiet arcs of neural activity that feel nothing like the quick flickers of daytime thought. These slow rhythms create the sensation that time has widened, that each moment carries more space within it, more silence, more softness. You are not watching time pass. You are resting inside it, enveloped in its quiet expansion. In the slow wave stages of sleep, the cortex produces broad, sweeping oscillations. These waves rise and fall like deep ocean currents, guiding the mind into states where thought dissolves and awareness becomes light and diffuse. Because these waves unfold so slowly, your internal sense of duration stretches to match them. Seconds feel longer. Experiences unfold in gentle, unhurried arcs. The mind is no longer keeping time, it is drifting with it, floating on its long, tranquil tides. During these stages, the hippocampus temporarily disconnects from the cortex, reducing the brain's ability to place experiences on a timeline. Without this connection, the mind enters a state where moments no longer accumulate as memories. Time ceases to be something you move through. Instead, it becomes a soft, continuous presence, an environment rather than a measurement. This is one reason deep sleep feels timeless. The brain is not recording it. You are experiencing time without anchoring it, resting in a pure, drifting now. Meanwhile, the thalamus reduces its relay of sensory information, closing the gates between the external world and your inner landscape. With the outside environment muted, the mind is left with only its internal rhythms, slow, peaceful, and deeply regular. These steady pulses cradle your perception, shaping a sense of time that is spacious and quiet. It is a rhythm made not of clocks or seconds, but of breath and heartbeat, of calm neural tides flowing through the night. Emotion adds its own softness to this stretching. In deep sleep, the amygdala rests, allowing experiences to unfold without urgency or weight. Without emotional anchors, time loses its jagged edges. It unfurls like a long ribbon across the darkness. This softness allows the mind to sink deeper into restoration, free from the pressures that compress or distort time during the day. Here, everything slows. Everything widens, everything becomes gentle, and with each breath, you feel this expanding sense of time wrap around you like a warm, quiet blanket. No moments are counted, no memories are formed. You float in a serene suspension where time is not something passing, but something holding you steady, wide, and endlessly peaceful. Soon, the mind will begin its upward journey through the sleep cycle once more. But for now, you remain in the deep, timeless heart of the night. As you continue drifting through the quiet layers of sleep, the mind begins to move through its natural cycles, patterns so ancient and precise that they shape your perception of time without you ever noticing. These cycles rise and fall like tides within the brain, guiding you from deep stillness to dreaming lightness and back again. Each cycle lasts around 90 minutes, but to the resting mind, it does not feel measured. Instead, it unfolds like a gentle loop, a rhythmic wave that carries you deeper into the night. Within these cycles, the brain shifts through distinct phases, each with its own internal tempo. In deep sleep, time widens and slows. In lighter stages, it begins to flow more smoothly. And in REM sleep, where dreams take on their vivid, colorful form, time becomes elastic, expanding and contracting according to emotion and imagination. These natural oscillations create the sensation that the night moves in long, immersive phases rather than in strict, equal intervals. You drift through them effortlessly, unaware that your inner clock is resetting itself with each transition. As you enter another of these gentle cycles, the brainstem modulates the waves of consciousness, regulating the flow between stillness and imagery. This rhythm acts like a metronome, made not of sound but of silence, marking the internal progression of the night. Your mind floats along this beat, but never feels it as a countdown. Instead, it experiences the cycle as a slow, comforting rotation, like the turning of a vast celestial wheel within your awareness. Meanwhile, the thalamus adjusts the gates of perception in sync with these cycles. During deeper phases, it closes the world out completely, allowing the mind to drift in pure restoration. During lighter stages, it opens just enough to let faint impressions through soft hints of body, breath, or distant sound. These subtle shifts create the sensation that time becomes more or less tangible depending on where you are in the cycle. At one moment, time feels like a vast ocean. The next, it feels like a gentle stream. Emotion influences these cycles as well. During REM sleep, the amygdala becomes more active, shaping the emotional landscapes of your dreams. This emotional clarity causes time to stretch or compress inside the dream state. A single moment of wonder may last what feels like hours. A long sequence may pass in a heartbeat. Yet the cycles keep their steady pace beneath these experiences, ensuring that the night remains structured even when your perception becomes fluid. With each slow passing of a cycle, the brain grows more restored, more synchronized, more aligned with its natural rhythms. You are held within these patterns, supported by their ancient precision. The night carries you forward not as a straight line, but as a series of gentle returns, each one deepening your rest, smoothing the edges of time, and preparing your mind for the next quiet phase of renewal. Soon, another shift will come, a rise toward lighter awareness, where time becomes clearer and thought begins to shimmer at the edges. But for now, you remain here, drifting in the hidden rhythms that cradle the mind through the long, peaceful night. As you drift deeper into the night's rhythmic cycles, the subconscious begins its delicate weaving, quietly stitching time into memory. During waking hours, experiences arrive in a steady stream, each anchored to a moment, a place, or an emotion. But here, in the softness of sleep, the brain takes these scattered threads and begins to arrange them into patterns. Time is no longer a straight line. It becomes a tapestry woven with meaning, color, and whisper-like impressions that will shape how tomorrow feels. Deep within the hippocampus, bursts of neural activity replay fragments of the day. These bursts are not chronological. Instead, they move like gentle waves, highlighting moments that carried emotional weight or cognitive relevance. This replay transforms fleeting experiences into lasting memories, subtly adjusting how you recall the passage of time. Moments that meant little fade softly. Moments that mattered gain clarity, weight, and place. In this way, the subconscious redefines the timeline of your day, not by counting hours, but by understanding their significance. The cortex receives these replayed signals like soft imprints pressed into fabric. It integrates them into long-term storage, creating a sense of continuity that binds your life into a coherent story. This process shapes not only what you remember, but how long events feel in hindsight. A rich, emotional moment may expand in memory, feeling longer and more vivid than it truly was. A period of routine may compress into something small and indistinct. The mind measures time not only by duration, but by depth, and sleep is where this depth is woven. As this weaving continues, emotional centers guide the process with remarkable precision. The amygdala gently adjusts the tone of each memory, smoothing out harsh edges and reinforcing soft, meaningful ones. Stress signals diminish, allowing the emotional timeline of your day to soften and rebalance. This emotional refinement restores your inner sense of pacing, helping you feel that time is manageable, that life flows at a rhythm your mind can hold with ease. The default mode network contributes by stitching together memories with imagination, filling gaps with symbolic textures and subtle narrative links. This blending creates the feeling that your life has a natural progression, even though memory is always reconstructed rather than replayed. In sleep, you do not remember time, you reshape it. You refine the rhythm of your own story, aligning it with your emotions, your identity, and the quiet wisdom of the subconscious. And as you rest in this gentle orchestration, you drift through a world where time is not rigid or external. It is internal, flowing from the mind's deepest currents. With each passing cycle, the tapestry becomes clearer, richer, more coherent. You awaken not with a perfect record of the hours behind you, but with a sense of direction, a sense of continuity, a sense that time is carrying you gently forward. Soon, your awareness will begin to rise toward lighter stages of sleep, where the first hints of morning clarity shimmer at the edges of thought. But for now, you remain wrapped in the silent weaving of time, held softly within the mind's quiet craftsmanship. As your sleep journey continues, a subtle realignment begins within the deepest structures of your mind. Throughout the day, the brain's internal clock is pulled and shaped by stress, stimulation, and shifting attention. But here, in the softness of night, this clock recalibrates itself. It releases the hurried tempo of waking life and returns to its natural rhythm, a slow, steady pulse that guides your sense of time, mood, and energy. You do not feel this change directly, yet it is one of sleep's most essential gifts. Deep within the hypothalamus, the suprachiasmatic nucleus begins to coordinate its signals with renewed precision. These neurons, sensitive to the cycles of light and darkness, adjust their timing during sleep to ensure the body's internal processes remain synchronized. Hormones rise and fall in gentle waves. Body temperature follows its nightly descent, and metabolic rhythms settle into balance. This alignment creates a calm foundation upon which your waking sense of time will rebuild steady, spacious, and unhurried. As these regulatory signals flow through the brain, the pineal gland releases melatonin in gradually shifting levels. This hormone acts as a quiet guide, shaping your timeline from the inside. It signals that the night is still unfolding, that the mind may continue to drift, that there is no need to prepare for action yet. Melatonin slows your internal pacing, smoothing the edges of your awareness and reinforcing the timeless quality of sleep. It helps the mind settle into rhythms that feel like deep, effortless floating. Meanwhile, the brainstem maintains the calm tempo of your vital functions. Breath remains slow and even. The heart beats in a gentle cadence. These steady patterns support the mind's recalibration, creating a continuous internal rhythm that feels like a soft lullaby. This harmony between body and brain makes time feel wide and expansive, as if each moment contains more room for rest, more space for silence, more freedom from urgency. Emotional pathways quietly adjust as well. With stress hormones reduced, the subjective speed of time slows. During the day, anxiety can make time race, excitement can make it stretch, boredom can compress it. But here, in the safety of sleep, these distortions smooth out. The emotional clock resets. You drift in a dimension where minutes no longer rush or drag, but simply are a calm continuum that supports healing and clarity. With every slow breath, your internal clock draws closer to its natural rhythm. You may not sense it, but the recalibration is shaping how you will experience tomorrow, how you will pace your thoughts, how you will feel the flow of the hours, how balanced and centered your awareness will be. Soon, the mind will guide you toward lighter sleep, where time becomes more defined. But for now, you rest in the gentle realignment of your inner world, where time moves with a softness that nurtures every part of your being. As the night drifts onward, your mind enters a state where the boundaries of time expand even further, revealing layers of awareness that remain hidden during the rush of the day. Here, in this tranquil descent, your perception of time is no longer confined to the present moment. Instead, it stretches gently, reaching backward into memory, forward into possibility, and inward into the vast, quiet space of your own consciousness. Time becomes not a line but a field, wide, soft, and deeply still. The default mode network, now fully active in the calm darkness of sleep, weaves this expanded sense of time. It moves freely between past experiences and imagined futures, creating a landscape where memories, dreams, and silent reflections all coexist. This spaciousness allows your awareness to drift through different layers of your inner timeline without urgency, without sequence, without pressure. You are not confined to now, you are resting inside the entire tapestry of your personal history. Meanwhile, the hippocampus continues its subtle work of integrating memories, but at this stage, the integration is less about sorting and more about contextualizing. It places events into broader patterns, forming connections across distant periods of your life. This gentle linking creates the feeling that time is coherent, that your experiences are part of a continuous story. You drift inside this expanding narrative, sensing, without realizing, a deeper alignment with the flow of your own existence. As emotional centers remain quiet, the mind gains access to a more neutral, broader perspective. Without the distortions of stress or urgency, the internal sense of time unfolds evenly. Past regrets soften. Future concerns lose their sharpness. Time stretches gently around you, giving each memory, each impression, each imagined possibility the space it needs to settle. In this softness, the mind can finally perceive time as something spacious rather than restrictive. The sensory cortices, largely inactive, free the mind from external pacing. No ticking clocks, no flashing screens, no conversations anchoring your attention to specific moments. Without these anchors, internal time becomes fluid, floating through cycles rather than marching through minutes. You drift between these cycles effortlessly, carried by the rhythm of breath and the slow pulse of the night. And through all this, you rest in a kind of timeless awareness, a place where your mind gently explores the deeper architecture of your life. Even as you sleep, this expanded sense of time restores the clarity and calm that waking life often obscures. With each breath, you sink more fully into this spaciousness, where past and future release their hold, and only the vast, peaceful present remains. Soon the mind will begin to ascend toward lighter consciousness, where time becomes clearer again. But for now, you drift in the quiet expansion of temporal awareness held gently in the wide, silent embrace of the night. As you sink deeper into the quiet expanse of night, your mind begins to drift through layers of time with a softness that feels almost weightless. These layers are not chronological, they are emotional, sensory, symbolic. In this state, the mind is free to move across them without resistance. A distant memory may rise beside a recent moment. A forgotten dream may drift into the warmth of a familiar feeling. Time folds into gentle layers, each one floating over the next like thin sheets of light. You are not thinking through these layers. You are drifting through them. Within the deeper cortical networks, neural activity becomes highly coordinated yet fluid. The mind enters a state where it can access different temporal impressions without confusion. This is why memories in sleep appear not as fixed points, but as impressions, soft echoes that feel familiar yet distant. The brain no longer tries to determine when something happened. It simply explores the emotional and sensory traces left behind. This temporal looseness brings a kind of clarity, a quiet understanding that time is not experienced in rigid steps, but in gentle waves. As the hippocampus stabilizes its role in memory processing, it allows older, long-stored impressions to resurface. These memories do not appear as chronological sequences, but as symbolic fragments, shapes, colors, faces, atmospheres. They rise not because the mind is recalling them intentionally, but because time's layers have thinned enough for distant echoes to reach the surface. In this quiet state, the border between your past and your present softens. They coexist peacefully, without urgency or demand. Emotion guides this drift subtly. The amygdala remains calm, allowing the mind to revisit moments without the sharpness of their original emotional intensity. A painful memory becomes simply a shape in the distance. A joyful one becomes a warm glow. This emotional softening allows time to be explored gently. There is no resistance, no tightening, no fear. The mind is free to move through its own history with compassion and ease. This is one of sleep's quiet gifts, the ability to approach time without being overwhelmed by it. The default mode network continues its quiet weaving, connecting these temporal layers into a fluid, dreamlike tapestry. Here, the past influences the present, the future echoes faintly into awareness, and imagination bridges the gaps between all of them. This is how time becomes spacious within the mind by allowing different layers to interact, blend, and harmonize. You drift through these connections effortlessly, carried by neural rhythms that move like slow tides beneath the surface of your awareness. With each breath, the layers of time grow softer, more blended, more luminous. You are drifting not through a timeline, but through an inner universe shaped by memory, emotion, and meaning. Soon, this drift will lead you toward the first hints of conscious thought, toward the gentle rise of morning awareness. But for now, you remain here, floating between the layers of your own timeline, held by the quiet intelligence of the sleeping mind. As you continue drifting through the quiet layers of your inner world, the mind begins one of its most delicate processes, the recalibration of emotion across the timeline of your life. During waking hours, certain moments feel heavier, sharper, more urgent. Others drift past unnoticed. But in sleep, these emotional weights shift gently. Time is softened, emotion is diffused. Experiences that once felt overwhelming begin to settle into balance, allowing your inner timeline to become smoother, more harmonious, more bearable. Within the amygdala, emotional memories lose their intense edges. The brain revisits experiences not to relive them, but to equalize them. Stressful moments lose their sting, unfinished feelings soften. The emotional charge that once distorted your perception of time dissolves into quiet neutrality. This is why, after sleep, yesterday's problems often feel lighter, because the emotional weight attached to those moments has been gently recalibrated in the dark. Meanwhile, the hippocampus takes these softened emotional impressions and redistributes them along the timeline of memory. What once felt urgent becomes simply a part of the story. What once felt confusing becomes clearer. The hippocampus does not erase emotion, it integrates it. It ensures that emotional experiences find their rightful place without overwhelming the mind. This integration creates a smoother emotional flow through your internal perception of time, making the past less jagged, the present less pressured, and the future less intimidating. The prefrontal cortex, resting yet faintly active, uses this emotional recalibration to restore rational clarity. It does not wake you or impose structure. It simply watches, adjusting the intensity of emotional memory so that your sense of time can remain coherent. A mind weighed down by unprocessed emotion experiences time as heavy and compressed. A mind soothed by sleep experiences time as open and fluid. Through this cooperation between emotion and logic, your internal timeline becomes lighter, more navigable. Emotional rhythms also guide the reconstruction of dreams. Scenes arise not in strict order, but in harmony with the shifting emotional landscape. A moment of comfort may stretch into a long, warm dream. A moment of uncertainty may dissolve quickly, replaced by something gentler. In this way, dreams become a soft rehearsal, an emotional rebalancing where time bends to support healing rather than merely reflect memory. And with every quiet breath, the emotional timeline reshapes itself. Past heaviness loosens its grip, present worries lose their urgency, future possibilities soften into something that feels more approachable. Time becomes a kinder companion, less a countdown, more a gentle flow you can drift with instead of struggle against. Soon, the mind will begin moving toward lighter stages of sleep, where thought becomes clearer and awareness brightens. But for now, you remain in this gentle recalibration, your emotional timeline smoothing itself into a peaceful continuity beneath the warm silence of the night. As the night deepens around you, your mind enters a state where the boundaries between past, present, and possibility begin to blur. In wakefulness, these three dimensions feel rigid, segmented into memory, awareness, and anticipation. But here, in the softness of sleep, they merge into a single, fluid continuum. The mind is no longer confined to the moment you came from or the moment you expect next. Instead, it drifts gently through all of them at once, held in a quiet fusion that feels infinite and weightless. Within the default mode network, this blending unfolds naturally. Past experiences drift upward like soft echoes. Present sensations dissolve into the background. Imagined futures shimmer faintly at the edges of awareness. The network weaves all of these impressions into a unified tapestry, a space where time flows in circles rather than straight lines. In this state, the mind discovers something it cannot access while awake, the deep truth that time is not separated by walls, but connected by meaning. The hippocampus supports this fusion by allowing distant memories to coexist with recent ones. It places them side by side, not as chronological events, but as emotional patterns, recurring themes, and symbolic shapes. A childhood moment may float beside something that happened yesterday. A forgotten hope may mingle with a future possibility. This gentle proximity gives the mind a broader perspective on your life, revealing connections that linear time obscures. Meanwhile, emotional centers guide this fusion with remarkable sensitivity. The amygdala, calmer now, allows emotional memories to integrate without overwhelming the present. Feelings blend softly past, joys resonating with present calm, past fears dissolving into the neutrality of sleep. This emotional blending shapes your sense of time in the morning. You awaken not just with memories, but with a deeper understanding of their place within you. The prefrontal cortex contributes by creating subtle, intuitive order within this fluid timeline. It does not impose structure, but gently aligns these blended layers into a form that feels coherent and meaningful. This is how insights form during sleep, how solutions appear, how clarity emerges, how the mind reorganizes the timeline of your life into something smoother, kinder, easier to navigate. And through all of this, you float in a state where time feels soft and boundless. Past, present, and possibility drift together like three quiet currents, merging into a single peaceful river. You are not pulled by any of them. You are carried gently by all of them at once. Soon, This fusion will guide you into a phase where time becomes clearer again, where the mind prepares itself for the slow ascent back into awareness. But for now, you rest in this weightless union of all that you have lived, all that you are, and all that you may become, held in the warm silence of a night that understands you more deeply than time ever could. As the quiet of the night deepens, the mind begins a subtle shift toward the future, toward the gentle shaping of the time you have yet to live. Not with thoughts or plans, not with urgency or anticipation, but with a soft, instinctive gathering of what will be needed when morning arrives. This is the mind's most delicate preparation, forming the first faint outlines of tomorrow while still wrapped in the peaceful darkness of now. You do not feel this gathering consciously, yet it shapes the way you will move through the coming day. In the prefrontal cortex, small clusters of neurons begin to stir, not fully awake, but softly aligning. They trace the faint contours of intentions and expectations, forming gentle pathways that your waking mind will later follow. These neural patterns are not decisions, they are possibilities. The mind is not forcing the future into shape, it is preparing space for it, creating a quiet readiness within your internal sense of time. Meanwhile, the hippocampus retrieves small fragments of recent experience, placing them near the surface of awareness where they will be accessible upon waking. These fragments act like stepping stones, guiding you into the flow of the next day. They ensure that the continuity of your life does not feel abrupt but smooth, natural, familiar. This gentle resurfacing is why you awaken with a sense of direction, even if you are not fully aware of it. The body contributes to this preparation as well. Hormonal cycles begin their slow adjustment, shifting toward the early stages of wakefulness. Cortisol levels rise by the smallest margins, setting the foundation for morning alertness. Yet this rise is soft, gradual, respectful of the stillness that surrounds you. The internal clock is signaling that a new cycle of time will soon begin, but not yet, not while the mind is resting in this final depth of night. Emotion remains calm, guiding the mind's preparation with a quiet balance. Unburdened by stress, the emotional brain allows the future to feel spacious rather than overwhelming. Possibilities appear gentle, challenges appear manageable. The emotional rhythm of tomorrow is being set now in the softness of sleep, so that when consciousness returns, your sense of time feels even, fluid, and compassionate. And through all of this, you remain suspended in peaceful darkness. The gathering of tomorrow does not pull you upward, it drifts beneath you, forming itself quietly while you continue to rest. Time is expanding in two directions, now holding the depth of all you have lived and opening gently toward everything you will live when dawn arrives. Soon, the mind will begin its slow ascent toward lighter stages of sleep, where thought begins to shimmer again, where awareness brightens at the edges, but not yet. For now, you remain in this silent architecture of tomorrow, a place where the future forms not through effort, but through the mind's natural, gentle intelligence. As the night moves gently forward, your mind enters a stage where the earliest hints of waking awareness begin to shimmer beneath the surface of sleep. These are not thoughts, yet not decisions, not reflections, just faint glimmers of consciousness, drifting like soft sparks through the darkness. You are still enveloped in rest, still carried by the deep rhythm of the night, but somewhere within, a delicate transition has begun. Awareness is not rising, it is approaching, slowly, quietly, respectfully. In the thalamus, a subtle shift takes place. After hours of shielding the mind from external noise, its gates begin to loosen ever so slightly. Not enough to wake you, not enough to draw attention outward, but enough to allow the first whispers of sensation to form. A faint sense of the body, the texture of breath, the softness of the space around you. These impressions do not anchor you in time. They simply remind the mind that a new phase of the night is emerging. The brain's neural rhythms respond to this transition. Slow wave activity begins to lighten, making room for gentle bursts of faster frequencies. These bursts act like lanterns flickering in the distance, signals that the mind is slowly preparing to rebuild linear time. But for now, they remain muted, drifting beneath the surface like reflections on still water. You continue floating, held between two worlds, the timeless depth of sleep and the soft edges of returning consciousness. Emotion remains calm, guiding this transition with extraordinary tenderness. The amygdala stays quiet, ensuring that nothing rises too quickly or too sharply. There is no jolt of awareness, no sudden shift. Instead, the emotional centers create a cushion, a warm, spacious field where your sense of self can begin to reassemble gently. This is why the moments before waking often feel peaceful, spacious, and strangely comforting. Time itself seems to stretch, as if encouraging you to rise slowly. The default mode network begins to weave the earliest threads of introspection, reintroducing the faintest sense of identity. Not fully, not with detail, just the soft feeling of "I am here." This whisper of self-awareness does not disturb your rest. It simply signals that the mind is gently reconnecting the narrative of who you are, preparing to welcome you back into the story of your waking life. And through all of this, you drift with effortless ease. You are not waking, you are approaching wakefulness the way dawn approaches the horizon, slowly, silently, with a glow that builds from deep within. The mind is organizing itself around the idea of morning, but it does so in the softest possible way, allowing you to remain wrapped in the comfort of the night. Soon, this drift will guide you into lighter sleep, where thought becomes clearer and the sense of time becomes more defined. But for now, you remain in this gentle threshold, a quiet place where awareness begins to shimmer, but the peace of sleep still cradles you completely. As you continue drifting in this soft threshold between deep sleep and awakening, the mind begins to reassemble the structure of time with extraordinary delicacy. For hours, you have floated in a world where moments stretched and folded, where memory and imagination blended, where time became fluid and vast. But now, without pulling you upward or disturbing your rest, the brain starts to rebuild the subtle scaffolding that will soon guide your waking experience of before, now, and after. It is a quiet reconstruction, calm, patient, deeply soothing. In the prefrontal cortex, faint lines of temporal order begin to reappear. Not rigid, not demanding, just gentle pathways forming beneath the surface. These pathways will help your mind navigate the sequence of moments when you awaken, but right now, they remain soft and malleable, like brushstrokes laid lightly on a blank canvas. They do not interrupt your rest. They simply wait, forming the foundation on which tomorrow's clarity will rise. Meanwhile, the hippocampus resumes its delicate coordination with the cortex, aligning memories into a more linear flow. The experiences of the day softened, integrated, and reshaped during the night begin to organize themselves subtly, not into a strict timeline, but into a coherent continuity. This is why, upon waking, your life feels like a flowing story rather than a scattered collection of impressions. Sleep does not erase time. It reconstructs it gently, giving the mind a refreshed sense of direction. Neural oscillations shift again, moving from the slow, deep rhythms of restoration toward more balanced waves. These changing frequencies create the first sensations of temporal pacing, the faint awareness that moments have shape again. But this pacing remains incredibly soft. It does not rush you, does not pull you forward. Instead, it creates a smooth surface beneath your drifting awareness, like the first thin layer of light forming on still water before dawn. Emotion supports this reconstruction with a calm, steady pulse. Without the pressures that compress or distort time during waking hours, the emotional centers allow the internal timeline to form in a gentle, balanced flow. There is no urgency, no heaviness, no resistance. Every part of your emotional landscape aligns with the soft rhythm of the night, preparing you to experience time tomorrow with renewed ease and patience. And through all of this, you continue to rest, floating in a quiet dimension where your sense of time becomes clearer without ever becoming sharp. You are not being pulled into wakefulness. The structure of time is rising slowly beneath you, like a foundation taking shape while you dream. Soon, this quiet reconstruction will lead you toward lighter consciousness, where the edges of thought become brighter. But for now, you remain in this peaceful reassembly, held in the soothing silence where time gathers itself gently, preparing to guide you into a new day. As the night continues its gentle unfolding, your mind enters a phase where temporal awareness begins to brighten, not sharply, not suddenly, but with the softness of dawn spreading across a quiet horizon. The deep timelessness of earlier sleep gives way to a faint sense of movement, a subtle rhythm beginning to rise beneath your resting consciousness. You are not waking, not yet, but the mind is preparing the first traces of orientation, the early whispers of now beginning to form like delicate threads of light. In the thalamus, sensory gates open by the slightest margin, allowing hints of internal sensation to drift inward. Perhaps the weight of your body, the temperature of the air, the softness of the pillow. These impressions do not anchor you in waking time, but they introduce the idea of presence, the suggestion that you exist in a moment, resting gently within it. This faint awareness is the first step toward re-entering the flow of time, a flow that will soon feel familiar again. Neural rhythms transition into lighter, more dynamic patterns, weaving together slow waves with gentle bursts of activity. This balance creates a soft flicker of awareness at the edges of your mind. These neural patterns do not create thoughts, they create the space in which thoughts will later form. They light the stage before the actors arrive. They prepare the air before the first whisper of morning consciousness. Temporal clarity begins to shimmer, but remains tender and distant, like a memory of time rather than time itself. Emotion remains peacefully subdued, guiding this transition with extraordinary gentleness. Your mind does not rush toward the future, it glides. The emotional centers ensure that this shift is smooth, that nothing feels abrupt or demanding. Without emotional spikes, time feels slower, wider, kinder. You drift within this emotional softness, your internal clock adjusting with delicate precision, preparing you for the steady rhythm of the coming day. The default mode network begins to hum softly, with interconnected impressions, hints of identity, fragments of memory, subtle anticipations. It does not yet form thoughts, but it rebuilds the sense of continuity that underlies your experience of time. This gentle hum reconnects you to your story, to the quiet thread of your life that continues even as you sleep. It is a reconnection without pressure or definition, just a soft awareness that you are moving through time, even as you rest deeply within it. With every slow breath, the mind brightens its awareness of the moment with a little more clarity. You continue drifting in the softness of sleep, yet time begins to feel lightly structured again. Moments regain their edges. Awareness grows brighter, though still wrapped in tranquility. You exist in a delicate balance, floating between timelessness and the first gentle hints of tomorrow. Soon, your mind will shift into an even lighter state, where thought begins to rise like faint morning mist. But for now, you remain here, resting in the gradual brightening of temporal awareness, held in the peaceful hands of the night's final hours. As the quiet body of night shifts gently toward its final arc, the mind begins to experience the first internal sensations of morning. Not light, not thought, not awareness in its full form, but a soft awakening that glows from within. It feels like warm air entering a still room, like the faintest radiance rising through darkness. This emergence does not disturb your rest, it enriches it. You remain deeply asleep, yet wrapped in a subtle brightness, a quiet promise woven into the fabric of your dreams. Within the prefrontal cortex, activity increases in delicate, shimmering pulses. These signals represent the earliest restoration of logical sequencing, the first silent gestures toward the ordering of time. They do not lift you into consciousness. They simply prepare the mind to step gently back into structure. Here, time begins to regain shape, not as pressure or speed, but as a soft alignment within your resting awareness. The sensory systems, still muted, begin to hum faintly. You may not notice it, but your brain is starting to feel your body again, the position of your limbs, the depth of your breath, the weight of your presence in the bed. These sensations act as anchors, helping the mind reorient itself in physical space. This reconnection provides the first subtle hints of here, preparing your inner timeline to shift from the boundless expanse of dream to the gentle progression of waking life. Emotion supports this process with remarkable tenderness. The amygdala remains quiet, ensuring that the emergence of awareness is not jarring. Instead of sharpness, there is warmth. Instead of urgency, there is ease. Emotional rhythms guide your return toward consciousness at a slow, compassionate pace. This emotional buffering ensures that the unfurling sense of time feels safe, steady, almost comforting, as though the mind is waking into its own kindness. Deep in the default mode network, the silent threads of identity reconnect, not fully, not consciously, just enough for the mind to remember that you are a person moving through a life, a story, a world. These threads do not pull you awake. They line the path you will follow when wakefulness finally comes. They weave continuity into the emerging brightness, ensuring that when you rise, you step into a timeline that makes sense. And still, you drift, still held by the quiet depth of sleep, still floating in a dimension where time is soft, pliable, and gentle. The mind's inner morning grows brighter, but it is not yet the morning of the world outside. It is the internal dawn, the first quiet turning of consciousness toward the day, while you remain wrapped in the sanctuary of night. Soon, your mind will enter the final stages of sleep, where awareness becomes clearer and the sense of time becomes more grounded. But for now, you remain in this luminous stillness, a place where the soul rests while the mind prepares, and where time awakens slowly alongside you. As the inner dawn continues to brighten, the mind begins to rediscover the subtle flow of time, not as something measured, but as something felt. For hours, you have drifted in a world where time was spacious and fluid, unbound by minutes or memory. But now, without pulling you from the softness of sleep, your internal rhythms begin to flow again. Time regains its quiet direction, its gentle momentum. It is like watching a river begin to move after a night frozen in stillness, slow, quiet, inevitable. Within the thalamus, signals carrying sensory impressions grow slightly stronger. They do not reach you fully yet, but they create a soft shimmer beneath the surface of awareness. The mind begins to feel the outline of the moment, the settling of the body, the warmth of the space around you. These impressions form the earliest markers of temporal continuity, tiny stepping stones that will soon help you re-enter the stream of waking time. Neural oscillations rise into faster, lighter patterns, creating the first gentle sense of progression. Wavelengths that moved like long, rolling tides now shift into shorter, brighter pulses. These rhythms give the mind a faint awareness of moving forward, though you remain deeply at rest. The mind is reacquainting itself with flow, the sensation of one moment following softly after another, like a distant melody returning after a long silence. Emotion follows this shift with grace. The amygdala stays serene, shaping the emotional pace of your transition. Anxiety does not rush you. Excitement does not stir you. Instead, a sense of quiet safety accompanies every change within your awareness. Time feels welcoming, like a gentle hand reaching toward you, inviting you to follow, but never pulling. This emotional softness ensures that the reawakening of time feels peaceful and familiar. Meanwhile, the default mode network begins to weave continuity back into your inner narrative. It reconnects subtle associations where you were before sleep, what your mind held last, what the next day quietly contains. These threads are delicate, still shimmering at the edge of dreaming, yet they give shape to your sense of self within time. It is not a return to thought, it is the return of coherence, reforming the ever-present line that ties your experiences together. With every slow breath, the flow of time becomes clearer, though it remains cradled in sleep's gentle quiet. You begin to drift through lighter currents of awareness, carried by rhythms that feel soft, but unmistakably forward-moving. The night has not left you. It simply opens room for the day to begin forming in the distance. Soon, your mind will enter the final stages of sleep, where consciousness hovers closer to the surface and the boundary between dreaming and waking becomes thin. But for now, you rest in the reawakening of time's gentle flow, held in a peaceful balance between the timelessness of night and the first currents of a new day. As the currents of inner awareness continue to brighten, your mind enters a delicate stage of preparation, an almost imperceptible gathering of clarity that will eventually guide you back into the waking world. You are still deeply enveloped in sleep, still drifting in the night's warm cradle, yet somewhere within, the architecture of time is being restored with great care. The mind is not rushing. It is simply preparing the landscape into which you will gently return. In the prefrontal cortex, signals of organization grow more coherent. They do not pull you upward, they merely sketch the faint outlines of structure, a sense of sequence, of direction, of continuity. These early impulses will later become the framework through which you understand your morning. For now, they drift beneath your consciousness like soft undercurrents, rebuilding the scaffolding of temporal awareness without disturbing your rest. The thalamus opens a little wider, allowing faint sensory impressions to shimmer more clearly. The weight of your body, the quiet of the room, the rhythm of your breath all begin to exist in a slightly more defined way. These sensations act as gentle anchors, grounding you in the physical present without forcing you to awaken. They prepare the mind to re-enter time not abruptly, but gracefully, like stepping into a stream rather than falling into it. Meanwhile, neural oscillations rise into a brighter interplay between slow restorative waves and the lighter pulses of near wakefulness. This blend creates a soft temporal awareness, the feeling that moments have shape again, though still wrapped in the soft haze of sleep. You begin to sense, without thinking, that time is becoming directional once more, flowing forward with increasing clarity. Emotion supports this shift with a tender balance. The amygdala remains quiet, ensuring that nothing disrupts the serenity of your transition. No urgency, no tension, no internal noise rushes into awareness. Instead, there is a gentle emotional neutrality, a calmness that smooths the re-entry into structured time. This helps preserve the peaceful rhythm of your waking, ensuring that the day will feel spacious rather than rushed. The default mode network continues weaving the subtle threads of continuity. It gathers the soft remnants of dreams, the echoes of memory, and the whispers of tomorrow, placing them into a form of inner coherence. This coherence is not thought, it is readiness. It ensures that when consciousness returns, you will feel like yourself, connected, oriented, steady within the flow of time. And with each slow breath, this preparation deepens. The night holds you softly, even as the mind begins to reshape the space you will soon awaken into. You remain suspended between timelessness and temporal clarity, a peaceful midpoint where the world is distant, yet beginning to take gentle shape once again. Soon, the edges of wakefulness will glow more brightly, but for now, you rest in this quiet preparatory space where the mind rebuilds time with patience, tenderness, and an extraordinary calm. As you remain suspended in this serene middle ground between deep dreaming and early waking, the mind begins a final and delicate blending. Dreams, those soft, drifting landscapes, shaped by imagination, slowly begin to merge with the restored framework of time. Not fully, not sharply, but in a smooth convergence that allows your inner world to transition without disruption. You hover in a quiet space where the last tendrils of dream follow the first faint currents of temporal awareness, moving together like two streams meeting in calm water. Within the visual and associative cortices, dream imagery grows lighter, softer, more transparent. Scenes lose their vivid edges, Symbols dissolve, landscapes fade into gentle impressions. This fading is not an ending, it is a handoff. The brain is releasing the dream world, returning its resources to the waking systems, but doing so with the gentleness of dissolving mist. Through this transition, time begins to feel clearer, not yet defined, but no longer fluid. The thalamus opens its gates a little wider, allowing more structured sensory signals to flow through. These signals still remain muted, but they form the earliest layers of reality: the texture of sheets, the temperature of air, the distance of stillness surrounding you. These impressions provide the first subtle footholds your consciousness will use to re-enter the world. Dream and sensation move side by side for a moment, blending softly before waking distinctions reappear. Neural oscillations shift again, with bursts of faster activity flickering among the slower restorative waves. This interplay generates the sense that something is changing inside you, an awareness, not of thoughts forming, but of possibility forming. Time begins to gather itself more completely, aligning your internal rhythm with the gentle momentum of the approaching day. Still, you remain within the night's embrace, held softly while the mind restores its structure. Emotion plays an essential role in this convergence. As the amygdala remains calm, the emotional tone of dreams softens into neutrality. Any lingering tension dissipates. Any lingering intensity fades. You awaken through this emotional clarity rather than through emotional residue. As a result, the transition into time feels peaceful and balanced. The mind enters the flow of the coming day without carrying the weight of the dream world with it. Meanwhile, the default mode network reconnects the threads of identity with growing precision. It gathers the quiet echoes of your dreams and places them gently into the background of your awareness, allowing them to become part of the story without overwhelming it. You will not remember most dreams, but their softness becomes part of the emotional texture of waking, contributing to the calmness you feel upon rising. With each slow breath, you drift further into this convergence dream, releasing you with tenderness, time welcoming you with quiet patience. You are not yet awake, but the world of sleep has begun to step aside, making space for the shape of morning to form. Soon, the final stages of sleep will guide you toward the surface of awareness. But for now, you linger in this gentle merging of dream and time, resting in the last harmonious notes of the night. As the final arc of night wraps itself around you, the mind begins to gather the pieces of the present moment, quietly, delicately, as though restoring a fragile sculpture. This is the stage where consciousness prepares its return, not through abrupt awakening, but through the soft reassembly of awareness. Time, once dissolved into dream and drifting impressions, now begins to take gentle shape again, forming the subtle outline of now beneath your resting mind. In the prefrontal cortex, threads of ordered thought begin to glow with greater coherence. These are not full thoughts, not yet, but the quiet foundations of perception and reasoning reawakening. They create the first faint sense that you exist inside a moment, a point along the flow of time. This reassembly is so delicate, so patient, that it never disturbs your rest. Instead, it shapes a peaceful container into which the day will later unfold. The sensory systems continue their soft awakening. The weight of your body becomes a little clearer. The rhythm of your breath feels slightly more defined. The silence around you becomes a quiet presence instead of a dreamlike abstraction. These sensations form the first anchors of waking reality. They do not pull you from sleep, they simply gather around you, like gentle lanterns illuminating the edges of the present. Neural oscillations lift into balanced, harmonious rhythms, no longer the slow tides of deep sleep, nor the scattered textures of the dream world. Instead, they settle into an intricate pattern that supports both rest and readiness. This is the mind's way of saying, you are still resting, but you are no longer drifting. Time regains its gentle continuity, moving through you like a soft current rather than a wide ocean. Emotion deepens this transition with warmth and ease. The amygdala remains soothed, allowing the mind to re-enter the present without tension. The emotional landscape is smooth and quiet, free from the contractions that compress time during waking hours. In this softness, the present moment feels welcoming, safe, steady, tender. You return to it, not with urgency, but with the peaceful cadence the night has gifted you. The default mode network gently reconnects identity with awareness, who you are, where you exist, the continuity of your life. These threads come together quietly in the background. They weave meaning into the moment you are re-entering, ensuring that when awakening finally arrives, it feels familiar and whole. You do not feel this reconnection as effort. You feel it as calmness, as a quiet sense of belonging within your own unfolding timeline. And with every slow breath, the present moment gathers itself more fully, still soft, still distant, still wrapped in the night's tender quiet, but gradually becoming real again. You are resting in a space where time has shape, but not pressure, where awareness has clarity, but not urgency. Soon, the final ascent into waking consciousness will begin, carrying you gently into the day. But for now, you remain in this peaceful reassembly of the present moment, held by the last serene layers of night. As the soft architecture of the present moment settles into place, the mind begins its slow, effortless ascent toward wakefulness. Not abruptly, not decisively, just a gentle brightening within the quiet depths of your awareness. The long, fluid night begins to narrow into something more focused. A single beam of clarity rising slowly through the darkness. Yet still, you remain at rest, carried upward as though floating on a warm, invisible current. Within the thalamus, sensory gates open a little wider now. The impressions of the world, the faint temperature of the room, the subtle sound of stillness, the quiet echo of your own breath grow slightly more defined. These sensations are soft invitations rather than demands, preparing you to step gently back into the stream of time. Awareness touches them lightly, like fingertips brushing the surface of calm water. Neural rhythms continue shifting toward brighter, more organized patterns. These oscillations create the first true sense of forward movement, the feeling that moments are beginning to flow in sequence once more, but the pace remains slow, kind, unhurried. The mind protects the peace of this transition, ensuring that waking does not feel like breaking, but like rising into clarity, the way dawn rises into the sky. Emotion supports this ascent with unwavering tenderness. The amygdala, still soothed, allows the emotional tone of waking to unfold gradually. There is no sharpness, no urgency, no sudden rise in tension. Instead, there is a soft expansion, an emotional warmth that spreads gently, preparing the heart to enter the new day with openness rather than resistance. This emotional grace is what makes waking after deep rest feel peaceful rather than fragile. The default mode network restores its full coherence, reconnecting the threads of memory, identity, and expectation. It gathers the story of who you are, placing you quietly back into your timeline. Not all at once, but in a slow awakening of context. Where you are, what you feel, the shape of the day that waits. These threads weave themselves into a gentle continuity that will carry your consciousness fully into the daylight. And with each slow breath, you drift closer to the surface of awareness, not pulled, not pushed, simply rising. The night is still wrapped around you, holding your body in warmth and stillness, even as your mind begins to glow with the quiet readiness of morning. You exist now in a peaceful transition, one foot in the timelessness of sleep, the other beginning to sense the subtle rhythm of the new day. As the ascent continues, the night folds itself gently around you one last time, softening its presence, dimming its vastness, preparing to pass you quietly into the hands of morning. You remain suspended in this delicate in-between, where sleep still cradles your body, yet awareness slowly brightens behind your closed eyes. Time feels neither dreamlike nor fully real. It feels like a whisper, a calm invitation guiding you toward the surface with perfect patience. In the sensory regions of the brain, awareness grows clearer in subtle increments. The mind begins to recognize the gentle pressure of the mattress, the faint interplay of warmth and air, the steady rise and fall of your chest. These sensations steady you within physical space, grounding your consciousness as it prepares to step into linear time again. Yet they arrive without urgency, each sensation blooming softly, like petals opening in low light. Neural rhythms brighten into harmonious patterns, blending the restorative waves of deep sleep with the lighter pulses of near wakefulness. These rhythms form a bridge, an elegant biological pathway connecting the fluid timelessness of dreams with the structured flow of the day ahead. You drift across this bridge effortlessly. Nothing pulls you forward. The mind carries you gently, aligning your internal clock with the early rhythm of morning. Emotion continues to hold you with deep quiet. The amygdala remains soothed, keeping the emotional waters calm as consciousness expands. Any lingering dream tones fade into neutrality. Any unprocessed weight dissolves into rest. What remains is a balanced emotional field, a calm foundation upon which the new day will rise. This emotional clarity ensures that time will feel spacious, unpressured, kind when you re-enter it fully. Memory returns in a soft shimmer. The default mode network reweaves the threads of identity with increasing coherence, reminding you very faintly of the story you are living, the life you are returning to. Not as thoughts, but as a subtle presence, a sense of self without language, an inner continuity coming quietly back into focus. Time begins to feel like a path again, though still wrapped in the warmth of night. And with each slow breath, the night thins, not disappearing, but stepping aside, making room for the gentle rise of the day. You remain held in its final embrace, resting in the peace it has built within you. Soon, the light of full awareness will return, but not yet. For now, you float in the final softening of the night, a sanctuary where time welcomes you, consciousness warms you, and the world waits with quiet patience. As the last layers of night drift quietly behind you, your mind begins to renew the inner rhythm that will guide you through the coming day. This renewal does not happen through thought or effort. It happens naturally, instinctively, within the silent machinery of the brain. The pulse of your internal clock grows steadier, clearer, more defined. Yet still, you remain deeply relaxed, floating in a space where every shift is soft, slow, almost imperceptible. Within the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master clock of the brain signals begin to synchronize more strongly. These signals create the subtle sense that time has direction again, that your awareness is moving gently toward the morning's unfolding. You do not feel this synchronization consciously, but it guides every part of your biology. Hormones adjust, neural circuits balance. The body prepares for wakefulness, with a grace that feels more like drifting than rising. The thalamus now carries sensory information with slightly increased clarity. The physical world is becoming more real again, but only by degrees. The pressure beneath your body, the softness surrounding you, the steady rhythm of breath, all coalesce into a quiet awareness that you exist within a stable environment. These impressions anchor your consciousness softly, ensuring that your return to structured time is smooth and grounded. Neural oscillations shimmer in a harmonious blend of alpha and theta waves, perfect for this transitional moment. These rhythms create the sensation of floating upward without moving, of gaining clarity without losing calm. They lend a delicate momentum to your awareness, re-establishing a sense of sequence, one moment beginning to follow another in a peaceful, predictable flow. Time is no longer an ocean. It is becoming a river once more. Emotion supports this renewal by maintaining an atmosphere of gentle neutrality. The amygdala remains quiet, keeping emotional tones soft and even. Without spikes of urgency or excitement, the mind can transition naturally. This emotional steadiness protects the peace you've cultivated during the night, ensuring that waking will feel like an unfolding, not an interruption. And meanwhile, the default mode network continues to rebuild your inner narrative softly, silently. Identity returns like a slow dawn rising behind the horizon. You begin to sense, without fully knowing, the continuation of your own story, the day waiting ahead, the thread of your life stretching forward into possibility. All of this forms without pressure, without language, just a quiet readiness blooming within you. With each breath, this inner rhythm grows more stable, more cohesive, more gently alive. You are not awake, but you are being prepared beautifully, patiently for the moment when awareness will open fully. For now, you drift in the renewal of your inner rhythm, held in the lingering calm of the night, wrapped in the earliest warmth of the day to come. As the mind continues its gentle upward drift, a faint brightness begins to spread through the landscape of your awareness. It is not light in the visual sense, nor thought in the cognitive sense. It is a soft illumination within consciousness itself, a quiet expansion that signals the approach of wakefulness. You are still fully embraced by rest, yet the mind begins to glow from within, like the earliest hint of dawn seeping into a silent horizon. In the sensory regions of the brain, signals strengthen just a little more. The body's outline becomes clearer. The warmth on your skin feels more distinct. The rhythm of your breath becomes not only present but familiar. These sensations act as gentle markers of the here and now, giving your consciousness small, steady points upon which it can eventually rest. The world is not calling you yet. It is simply appearing, slowly, softly, without urgency. Neural oscillations transition into a more organized interplay between theta and emerging alpha waves. These rhythms create a spacious clarity within the mind, an inner environment capable of forming thoughts, yet still deeply calm. It is a state of readiness without effort, awareness without activity. The brain is preparing the conditions for consciousness, sculpting the silent architecture into which your waking thoughts will later flow. Emotion remains quietly balanced, supporting this brightening with smooth, even tones. There is no tension, no pressure, no emotional residue rising from dreams. Instead, there is a gentle emotional neutrality, like a serene, open field in which the new day can take shape. This neutrality helps preserve the peaceful rhythm that sleep has nurtured, ensuring that your re-entry into time will feel steady and kind. The default mode network slightly increases its connectivity, allowing the first subtle hints of self-awareness to shimmer through. Not memories yet, not intentions, just the soft recognition of existence. A faint sense of I am forming in the background of your consciousness. It is the first true signal that your inner narrative is awakening, gathering itself quietly while still honoring the deep rest that holds you. And with each slow, unhurried breath, this inner brightness grows. Awareness expands, not rushing upward, but blooming, like a flower opening in perfect stillness. Time begins to feel clearer, more defined, yet still comforting in its softness. You are not waking, but you are turning gently toward wakefulness, guided by the natural intelligence of the mind. Soon, the final transition will begin, the moment when the world around you becomes real again, when thought forms, when your inner morning fully arrives. But not yet. For now, you rest in the slow brightening of conscious presence, held in the peaceful quiet that bridges night and day. As the inner brightness continues to unfold, you slip into the final realm of quiet awareness, a tranquil borderland where sleep still holds you, yet consciousness feels near, hovering softly like a gentle presence just beyond reach. This is the last drift before waking, a peaceful interval where the mind savors stillness, preparing itself with extraordinary grace. Time feels tender here, neither distant nor fully formed, but close enough to feel like a warm outline surrounding you. In the thalamus, sensory input becomes subtly refined. The weight of your body, the distance between breaths, the faint silence of the room all begin to take on clearer shape. These impressions are not enough to wake you, but they gently reaffirm your place in the physical world. They act as the final anchors, grounding your emerging awareness, steadying the mind for its eventual return into the measured flow of time. Neural oscillations shift again, producing soft waves that support a state known as quiet waking, even though your eyes remain closed and your body deeply relaxed. These rhythms flicker with the first capacity for thought, yet no thoughts appear. They simply prepare the mind's landscape, smoothing the pathways, brightening the channels, ensuring that waking consciousness will rise without friction, without confusion, without rush. Emotion remains serene, providing the final layer of calm that stabilizes this transition. The amygdala stays quiet, ensuring that nothing sharp or urgent intrudes on this peaceful moment. As a result, The emotional tone of your awareness becomes warm, balanced, and open. It is a clarity without intensity, a readiness without pressure, a rare emotional stillness that only sleep can create. The default mode network connects even more fully now, reweaving the subtle narrative threads of self. You begin to sense, very faintly, the continuity of your life, the gentle awareness that you are someone resting, someone soon to awaken, someone living within a story that stretches beyond this moment. Yet, this awareness remains soft, like a shadow outlined in warm light. It does not break your rest, it enriches it. And with each breath, the boundary between dreaming and waking becomes thinner, lighter, more transparent. You float in this in-between space, this final sanctuary where the world has not yet arrived, but the mind is already preparing to greet it. The night holds its last quiet note, and the day waits patiently just beyond the horizon of your awareness. Soon, you will feel the gentle pull of the waking world, thoughts forming, senses sharpening, time recovering its full structure. But not yet. For now, you drift in the last, luminous moments of quiet awareness, cradled by the fading stillness of the night. As you linger in the final edge of sleep, the world around you is still softened by the night's embrace, yet the gentle signature of wakefulness glows ever so faintly within your mind. You are resting in the most delicate point of transition, where darkness has loosened its hold, but light has not yet taken form. Here, time feels suspended, stretched into a single, endless breath. You are not dreaming, and you are not awake. You are floating in the tender pause between the two. In the thalamus, the filtering of sensation grows slightly clearer. The warmth of the blankets, the faint stillness of the air, the steady pulse of your own breath all become more distinct. These sensations do not call you back. They simply greet you, waiting patiently for the moment you decide to return. They form the earliest touch points of reality, gently outlining the world you will soon re-enter. The brain's oscillations rise into patterns that shimmer with readiness. Alpha waves flicker softly through the cortex, preparing networks for full awareness. These rhythms create a subtle brightness within the mind, a sense of space, clarity, and forward motion. Thoughts have not yet begun to form, but the channels through which they flow are opening, wide and unhurried. The mind is brightening, not by force, but by nature. Emotion remains calm and welcoming. The amygdala's quiet stillness ensures that the return to consciousness carries no weight, no sharpness, no urgency. Instead, there is a profound sense of gentleness, as though the day ahead is approaching with open hands rather than demands. The emotional rhythm of your being aligns with this calm, ensuring that waking will feel like an unfolding rather than a departure from rest. The default mode network restores its full narrative coherence. Identity returns softly, like a tide rising around familiar shores. Memory, intention, and self-awareness drift toward the surface, aligning themselves in a quiet, elegant sequence. You begin to feel not through thought, but through presence that you are returning to your life, to your story, to your place within time. And with each breath, the boundary becomes almost transparent. You could wake now, with ease, with clarity, with peace, but sleep still holds you gently, allowing you these last silent moments where time slows, the world is distant, and consciousness lives in a warm, unbroken glow. Soon, the day will touch you. Your eyes will open. Awareness will bloom fully. Time will resume its steady path. But not yet. For now, you rest in the moment before waking suspended in quiet light, wrapped in the final softness of the night, held by the calm intelligence of a mind that has restored itself beautifully.